So there's a lot of hand-wringing and open conversation right now about where the Democratic Party is, right? They lost that election. They seem to be shiftless and rudderless right now. They don't really have a central person who speaks on their behalf. And we're okay with that, actually. We sort of like it. But we do want to explore what this conversation is, what they're saying, and whether it's getting worse before it gets better. Because, well, pop the popcorn is kind of fun when your political opponents are disintegrating before your very eyes. Let's start with Stephen A. Smith, who was on Bill Maher's show on HBO.
The man was impeached twice. He was convicted on 34 felony counts. And the American people still said, he's closer to normal than what we see.
Exactly.
Left. That's what they're saying. He's closer to normal. Why? Because something that pertains, when you talk about the transgender community, for example, and you're talking about issues that pertain to less than 1% of the population, the Democratic Party came across as if that was a priority more so than the other issues. And so he comes into office. Now you're talking about childbirth, citizenship, and what have you. He knows that's not going to pass the muster, but he knows that he made that promise. So when he shows up week one on Capitol Hill and he says, this is what we're going to do through an executive order, even though it's going to be shot down through the courts and what have you, he's saying, I kept my promise. A lot of other things that he's going to point to that he's going to try to do. I kept my promise. Then you turn around and you look at the left and you say, what promises did you keep? Now, you might know the answer to that. I'm certainly not questioning your knowledge about that at all. What I'm saying is what resonated with the voter. What voter out there can look at the Democratic Party at this moment in time and say, there's a voice for us, somebody that speaks for us, that goes up on Capitol Hill and fights the fights that we want them fighting on our behalf. They didn't do that. And that's why their behinds are home. And that man is back into the White House. And they want to sit up there and talk. You look at the networks right now. They're talking about, look at it. This is the latest. Look at him. Here he goes again. Well, you know what here he goes again means? He's doing what he said he was going to do. He promised you he was going to do these things. And he walked into office week one. And that's exactly what he's doing. And he's saying, y'all do something about it. And when you try to do something about it, he's going to say, look at them now. Now they're concerned about these issues. Were they talking about that during the campaign? Hell no.
All right, let me break this apart and tell you how Stephen A. Smith is wrong. And let me start at the beginning. I got nothing. He's 100% right. That's 100% spot on. There's no denying it. In fact, the very first point that he made is the most overwhelming and emphatic point the Democrats still can't get a handle on, which is everything that you threw at him. You called him an insurrectionist. You called him a dictator. You called him authoritarian. You called him a Russian puppet. You said that he had stolen the election. You called him a violent, race baiter. You tried to imprison him multiple times. You threw all of these trumped up fake court actions against him in New York, in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C., where the juries were overwhelmingly stacked against him, where there was no way he was going to get acquitted. You tried to keep him off the ballot by claiming that he was a convicted felon, and so therefore you shouldn't even have the right to vote for him. And the American people still saw him as a better representative for their views, their values, their opinions, and what they want got done than the choice they had with the Democrats. As awful as you set this guy up to be and everything you threw at him and you tried to demonize him, you put him through all of that, and the American people, weighing the two choices, said, yeah, we're better off with him. And Democrats still can't figure that out. They refuse to come to terms with that. I think if they actually did come to terms with it, it would be such an existential crisis for who they are and what they stand for that they'd have nothing else. Because understand something, for the last 10 years, the Democrat Party has stood for one thing and one thing only, opposing Donald Trump, which is not something you build a party out of. And as we mentioned on the show last week, the one thing that they back when they did stand for something was during the Obama administration. And it was Obamacare. Oh, we're going to fundamentally, radically transform the United States of America. This is the fundamental change we've been waiting for, fundamental change. And now Affordable Care Act is hardly affordable. In fact, it's more expensive than it's ever been. And if you look at the chart of healthcare costs in this country, they spike right at the beginning of when the Affordable Care Act was implemented, which, by the way, most of us warned you about and told you was going to happen. And then you've got Ezra Klein, hanging out with Jon Stewart, lamenting the fact that all the liberal progressive plans that they wanted during the Obama years, that was going to be the utopia they finally got, none of them have been implemented. Absolutely none of them. And that was the pinnacle, that was the peak of Democrat progressivism and what the party stood for under Obamacare. They're still beholden to Obama. They still think he's a saint. They can't come to terms with the fact that he has ruined the party, turned them into the reactionary Alinsky force that they are, and all they can do is oppose Donald Trump. Nobody can say who they are and what they stand for. Stephen A. Smith is 100% right. And so now, basically, they're all trying to vie for the future of the party. Here's Michael Bennet, Democrat of Colorado. We're told that he wants to run for president. We're told that he's a moderate. There's no such thing as a moderate Democrat anymore. They've been kicked out of the party. They've been weeded out. This is the party that was formed in the vision and makeup of Barack Obama, a radical community organizer. And so this is why they'll never acknowledge it. But if they look in the mirror or if really do some soul searching, that's who they are now. And there's no turning back. They have to completely reorient the party if they want to. But here's Michael Bennet. The knives are out. He's going after Gavin Newsom, of all people, because he's breaching the orthodoxy by having Charlie Kirk on his podcast. Here, watch.
Governor Gavin Newsom went so far as to say the Democratic brand is toxic right now. Senator, those are powerful words. Do you agree that the Democratic brand is toxic?
I do agree that the Democratic Party brand is really problematic, and I think that it is a brand that it is, with all respect to my colleague from California, is associated with New York and with California, is associated with the educated elites in this country, and not anymore with working people in this country. You know, the good news is for the party, I think, is that Donald Trump is pursuing the same trickle-down economics that he pursued the first time he was president, to make sure that he can create again the tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the United States and pay for it by taking away health care from the American people. That's really bad for America. But the Democratic Party ought to be able to come back under those circumstances with a pretty good argument about why we could lead better than Donald Trump and why we are able to provide a better set of economic policies, a much better set of healthcare policies that ensures universal healthcare finally for everybody in this country. And as a former school superintendent, actually has something to say about the fact that we're running an 18th century school system in America, and our kids desperately needed to be a 21st century school system that makes them competitive again. Our kids are invisible to Donald Trump. And if the Democratic Party would show up with some imagination, I think not only would we do better, the American people would do better.
Yeah, so that's a fascinating thing, and he's trying to triangulate and juxtapose himself against the Democrats. So here he is railing against the Democrats too. But let's break down what he had to say there. First of all, yeah, you're right. The Democratic Party brand is in big trouble right now, but it's because of those crazy California, New York liberals who have ruined the party. Right here in the middle of the country, here in Colorado, we're doing things right. Yeah, what do we know about Colorado right now? Colorado led the way in legalizing pot smoking. So you got a bunch of dirtbag, drugged out hippies urinating and defecating in the streets of Denver. Have you been to Denver lately? Have you smelled the fresh air there in Denver? Rocky Mountain High has taken on a whole new meaning. High taxes, lousy school system, and all the benefits for illegal immigrants there. And so, excuse me, Senator Bennet, how exactly is Colorado different than California, except you don't have any coastline? No palm trees. Other than that, I'm at a loss. Okay. And then what was the last thing you said about the school system? You know, our public schools are in an 18th century model, and we need to update it and revamp it. And who has run the American public school system for the last 100 years in this country? Who has called the shots, top to bottom, at the state level, the local level, at the federal level? Democrats have had carte blanche, a blank check for whatever they want for the public school, the government-run school system. Every time Republicans try to put through any reforms, whether it's school choice, a voucher system, sending the money back to the states and dismantling. Yeah, you got complaints about the school system right now. You got complaints about the education and the curriculum and the radical policies. And you think Colorado is pristine? Your state is leading the way in the dysfunction, and the Democrats have caused it all along the way. So he may be right that there's a problem, but he has no idea that the call's from coming inside the House, Senator. All right, let's get out of the politicians, get back to thought leaders. Here's Maureen Dowd, columnist at the New York Times, the elite of the elite. She represents your New York liberal Democrat. Let's see what she has to say about the state of the party.
They just stopped being any fun. I mean, they made everyone feel that everything they said and did and every word was wrong. And people don't want to live like that, feeling that everything they do is wrong.
No. You think we're over that era? Do you think that?
No, I think,
right.
I mean, I think Democrats are just in a coma. They haven't figured out.
Right. But no, the woke are not giving up on that. I mean, we the Seven Dwarves movie just came out.
Oh, right.
And
there are no dwarves, right?
They fought about the dwarves. It's so funny. This is again one of my big problems with progressives. They're so stupid so often about things that they find their way back to something that's very unprogressive. Like you think getting jobs for people, very progressive. Not if you're a dwarf, because like there are dwarves out there who wanted to play these parts who couldn't because it was somehow politically incorrect to portray dwarves as, I don't know, minors who know Snow White. It's a fucking crazy character that somebody invented for children. And you're arguing about whether it's right if real dwarves play dwarves. There are dwarves in the world. And there are jobs for them that you lost on there. And then Snow White loves Palestine. Like, I wasn't going to see this movie anyway. But, that... people who get their news from TikTok, just please shut the fuck up.
It was, I think the Democrats just got to have a suffocating persona where you just couldn't do anything or say anything that wasn't to be criticized.
Somebody once wrote, "The politics of purity makes people stupid and mean."
Was that you?
It was you, fool.
Oh.
That's kind of funny, actually. Maureen Dowd is right as well, although I am worried about the fact that she talks without actually moving her mouth or making a facial expression. There may have been a little... Do I need that? Do I have too many lines up here? Should I get the injections? No, I think I'm fine. She's right. Stephen A. Smith is right. Bennet is half right, but he doesn't realize that he and his party are to blame for everything that's happened. And, well, like I said before, we're popping the popcorn and enjoying the disintegration of the political left in America, because this is a party without direction and without any sort of aim. And honestly, I'm being completely genuine. I want there to be a strong and robust two-party system in this country, and I would like both of those parties to be sane. And I'm a Republican, and let me tell you something. We're not always very competent. We can't get our act together, and we screw up all the time. But at least we're not nuts.